So I think we're going to get started. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to our session. I'm Robert Sedgwick. I'm a member of JSTOR's Content Strategy and Relationships team. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and their affiliations.
I'm Socrates Silva, and I'm the head of the International and Area Studies Unit at the UCLA Library.
Hi, this is Fernando Genovart. I'm the director of Libreria Garcia Cambeiro, a book vendor from Latin America.
And I'm Melissa Gasparado. I'm the deputy university librarian at the University of Chicago.
Thank you all. So the title of our session today is Making Direct-to-Open eBooks Globally Accessible, a Collaborative Effort. And I think the key word here is collaborative, because this 4-year pilot never would have happened without the open collaboration from a community of librarians, scholars, and publishers. It also could not have happened without the participation of the 3 panelists you see before you. I'm going to begin by briefly giving some background into this pilot, how it got started, and what the objectives were. I'll then show what happened when we published books from Latin America in a direct-to-open model on JSTOR, looking at 2 publishers in particular. I'll also talk about some of the challenges and successes that we encountered along the way, and then we'll hear from each of our panelists what their role was in getting this pilot off the ground, some of the successes and challenges they experienced. So this project, which is, as I mentioned, a pilot program currently in its 4th year, it began as a problem or a challenge in need of a solution. The Latin Americanist Research Resources Project, LARRP, was looking for a cost-effective way to publish and preserve print-to-digital monographs from Latin America. JSTOR, as a not-for-profit, worked to find a way to support what LARRP was looking to do in a way that was affordable. JSTOR would provide the platform, technical support, and long-term preservation, and LARRP would do the crowdfunding among its member institutions. So we launched the pilot in 2019 with one publisher, the Latin American Council of Social Sciences, better known as CLACSO, and we published a total of 441 open access books on JSTOR. The partnership grew to include both CLACSO and Libreria Garcia Cambeiro, and led to the release of numerous Spanish language books on JSTOR, including 34 titles from the Center for Advanced Studies of the National University of Cordoba. Then in year 4, we worked with Prometeo Editorial, a highly regarded commercial publisher from Argentina. There are currently 100 titles from Prometeo on JSTOR. Now I want to show you what the usage global impact looks like for CLACSO and Prometeo when their books were made freely available on JSTOR. So over a 4-year period, CLACSO books have been accessed more than 1,700,000 times, either as page views or downloads by more than 5,500 institutions in 224 countries around the world. This is looking at a heat map showing the countries where CLACSO books were used the most. And in the left-hand column, you see the top 20 countries. It's kind of interesting that if you look at China during this period, China generated 3,389 item requests, and I find that very compelling. So the Prometeo books have only been on the platform for about 7 months, but the usage is already looking very, very impressive, with more than 14,000 item requests from 709 institutions in 78 countries. I should mention that Mexico, Colombia, and US were the top countries for both Prometeo and CLACSO. This slide, we're looking at the usage of the Prometeo titles per month. October and November are our high usage months, so it'll be interesting to see what November looks like at the end of the month. This is looking at the titles accessed by institution. Not surprisingly, most of these institutions, if not all of them, are based in Latin America. And again, we're looking at the heat map of the countries that use the Prometeo titles the most. So I'll just quickly mention a couple of challenges that we ran into during this pilot. The first happened when there was an administrative change at CLACSO, and the incoming editor decided to put the brakes on giving us more books. And that is why we had to pivot to Prometeo. And the second challenge was the reticence of Prometeo to provide us with a complete corpus of frontlist titles, which meant we had to opt for a curated list of frontlist and backlist titles. In closing, I'll say that we were successful in publishing a total so far of 575 direct-to-open books on JSTOR with the support and collaboration of the library community and the Latin American studies community. The success metrics that we are seeing in terms of usage and global impact are clear indications that this content provides tremendous value to the global community of Latin American scholars. Moreover, the success of this pilot tells us that we need to look for a sustainable way to continue this initiative into the future. We're currently forming an advisory group that will make recommendations as to the best way to transition this pilot into a fully sustainable JSTOR Books program. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa, who will talk about LARRP and LARRP's role in this pilot.
Thank you very much, Robert. Can everyone hear me? Yes? No? Yeah, okay, great. So thank you for coming. I know it's we're getting towards the end of the conference and everyone's tired and it was rainy, and so thank you. I appreciate you being here to hear about this project. So in addition to working at the University of Chicago, I've also been a longtime member of the advisory board of the Latin Americanist Research Resources Project, other known as LARRP. And so I'm going to be talking today about LARRP's role partnering with JSTOR to ensure the preservation and access of these high-quality scholarly monographs from Latin America. First, I do want to provide a little bit of background information on LARRP, and then I'll walk through the approach that we've taken and some of the issues that have come up and how we're dealing with those. So first, the LARRP is an organization formed in the early 90s as part of the Global Resources Network, which is administratively housed at the Center for Research Libraries. And the purpose of that group is to increase the availability of free and open access information in support of scholarship and learning about Latin America. So the group consists of about 50 member libraries and some research centers with an interest in supporting discovery, promotion, and preservation of OA materials produced in or about Latin America and the Caribbean. And our member dues are pooled to support the creation of open access resources by funding primarily digitization and discovery of that material. So some representative examples include digitizing a 19th century Cuban periodical or digitizing audio cassettes of ethnographic interviews from Afro-Colombians and indigenous groups. There's an advisory board that meets a few times a year. We discuss the call for proposals, the status of previously funded projects, efforts to grow and diversify the membership, and we also try to help get the proposals in shape for consideration by the full group. Member representatives meet annually where we deliberate and vote on the funding proposals that have come in that year. But in recent years, and more specific to this particular project, the group has begun considering the endorsement of projects for which no financial commitment is necessary in order to provide non-monetary consulting or intellectual support. So what was previously known as the Latin American Open Monographs Project was the first of those endorsements. And in 2018, Angela Carreño, who was then the head of collections at NYU and a member of the LARRP advisory board as well, initiated a collaboration with JSTOR to explore what might be done about the problem of stewardship for the digital Latin American scholarly monograph produced by nonprofit publishers in particular. At the time, it was clear that those high-quality works were, one, not getting the kind of distribution that they merited outside of the Global South. Two, they weren't being adequately preserved. These were primarily PDFs posted on the web, so there wasn't that continuity of access. And three, they lacked sufficient metadata for discovery. So as chair of the LARRP Resource Discovery Working Group, I got involved at that point to help imagine what it would take to develop a sustainable model for opening up this content, along with solid preservation and quality discovery and access points. So this was a values-driven project, and our values emphasized, one, the importance of the specialized monograph to scholarly communication, especially in the humanities, and the need to explore sustainability in partnership with mission-driven publishers who are embracing knowledge as a public good, the importance of supporting stewardship efforts that give voice to the marginalized, and the importance of an even playing field in scholarly communication between the global north and the global south. So the model that we experimented with involved working with a trusted in-region book dealer, who you'll hear from next, who had relationships with publishers and could help us negotiate the rights. So you might imagine there are some pretty significant trust issues concerns on the part of publishers when thinking about signing agreements with platforms that are based in the global north. And ultimately, what LARRP did as a group was to endorse an exploration seeking to understand workflows and costs associated with opening up the scholarly monograph, understanding that there are costs on the publisher, book dealer, and platform sides, but not really understanding what those costs were at the outset. JSTOR was really instrumental here. We worked with them to develop some back-of-the-envelope estimates and used that to help us understand what amount of funding we'd need to cobble together from participating libraries to test this out with a particular publisher front list. And as you heard from Robert, that publisher was CLACSO. So as you heard from Robert, we worked with CLACSO for the first 3 years of the project, and as he's noted, that resulted in hundreds of titles made available through the JSTOR open platform, including metadata. And we also started working with other publishers as funding allowed. And Fernando is going to talk about the evolution of our business model and the process we developed. But what LARRP members have provided over the 4 years of the project is their endorsement of support, which indicates why their institutions should support this work, intellectual guidance on the selection of publishers, marketing efforts, including webinars discussing the project and answering questions, as well as providing matching funds for those institutions committed to providing financial support in year 3. So what's exciting to LARRP is that every title has seen usage, and usage is highest across Latin American countries. So that demonstrates the importance of supporting these materials, these types of partnerships, not just to provide access to a broad diversity of material from Latin America to US-based scholars, but also to support researchers in region as part of a meaningful commitment to equitable global access. So no project is without roadblocks, and there have been several. Robert mentioned one about continuity with the publishers. The goal for this project is, of course, to develop scalable and sustainable models for collaborative work to support open access books. But currently, Angela Carreño and I have been doing all of the promotional work for this project ourselves. We hold meetings, distribute informational content, and work with librarians individually to build support and secure funding, and that's not scalable or sustainable. We've also had a suggested financial contribution from libraries, but we've accepted whatever level of support a library could commit. So both of those things are neither scalable nor sustainable. And so the next phase of the project is to determine how we might fold support for the Open Latin American monograph into JSTOR's existing marketing process and work with them on developing a pricing model that makes sense going forward. And with that, I'll hand it off to Fernando.
Hi, thank you for being here. It's difficult to continue because the presentation of Robert and Melissa was very good. I don't know if I can be so good in my presentation. The only thing I can put is more passion in it. But for me, it's important to tell who I am and which is my company. We are a book vendor for Latin America. My grandfather started the business searching books for libraries. And in the last years, we get also subscriptions, and then we do the cataloging. It's easy to speak this in this panel because all of you know what is a book vendor and what is a library. But when I explain this in my country to my people I know, it's difficult to explain. So in a way, the language, it's not only speaking Spanish and Portuguese, it's now knowing what things means. And regarding the open access project, one of the challenges was the difference between what the North America publishing industry is and what is in Latin America. In case of Latin America, there are many institutions that have open access, but for a Latin American perspective, an open access is a PDF in a website. That's a PDF in a website for some librarians here is not sustainable, and probably in the future it's not to be any more open access, so that is not open access. Then they had a financial problem. Here in the States, because it has a robust industry, they have many places to get money, grants. Mainly in Latin America, the money came from the government, and I don't know if you know what's going on in our government in Argentina, but the government changed, and when they change, the institutions change. And that is, one time you have money, and then you have nothing, the money. It's not the same here in the States, at least until now. No? Also, the discoverability is not the same. For a Latin American perspective, you can check in my website, but don't metadata, they don't have a JSTOR, you cannot get in other places, no? The other thing that happened when we talk with a publisher is the language barrier. In my case, I speak Spanish and sort of Portuguese, so it's not a problem. But the problem is the language barrier, as I told you before, is how to explain what North American libraries needs, okay? Let's talk about culture and information. And to sum up, I will try to explain some personal issue. This project started in 2010, there are more 14 years. It's older than my oldest daughter that is 13. And I started in a ALA in Philadelphia talking with Angela Carreño, that Melissa talked many times, and she's our champions, really. If not, we didn't have Angela Carreño, I will never be here. And the concern about Angela, and nowadays is more important, was, Fernando, I am seeing a lot of open access in the web in Latin America, but no one is acquiring them. And in some cases, there are more digital materials that they never go to print. So what's going on with the legacy of our libraries? And thinking of that project, we start searching and a brainstorm and get the idea. After many meetings with Angela, then we met Melissa that is here, and they told me, Fernando, we need an example. Gave us something to make a pilot project, to do something different. Searching for publisher, we get CLACSO, that is a well-known publisher in Latin America, that has the quality of publish in different countries of Latin America. They publish not only in Argentina, they have books in Mexico, Colombia, Peru, Chile, Venezuela, Cuba. So that's why we choose CLACSO. Regarding the type of publishers, there are two types of publishers in Latin America. There are publishers that already have the material in open access. That was the case of CLACSO. Those publishers have some problem that the bureaucracy and the leadership change. And when they change the project. That's why after 3 years working with CLACSO, they decided not to continue with this project. At that time, brainstorming with Angela and Melissa, Sean from JSTOR, we start looking which is going to be another publisher in order to take CLACSO place. And then we get the idea of Prometeo. Prometeo, as a pilot project, is to show the other type of publisher. So you have, in Latin America, publishers that are already publishing open access, that is a PDF in the website, but then you have commercial publishers that are not doing open access, and in some cases they are not doing electronic too. We get with Prometeo, and that is the year 4 of this project. As Melissa stated, I would like also to continue and make this in a scale way. All the open access projects that I see, are thinking in a small pilot project, but we need to, in order to increase this project, to think in a scale of all Latin America, and the idea that we were brainstorming today in order to continue is the idea of to get more funding and to have thousands of books, not only 500 titles. Okay, thank you. I will leave with Socrates.
Hi, everyone. I've been at UCLA for all of 3 months, but before I came to UCLA, I was at Columbia University for 9 years. And from the very beginning of my work there, I started working with Angela Carreño and Melissa Gasparado and LARRP community to help get this off the ground. So both UCLA and Columbia have strategically valuable and established area studies units, as well as carved out resources and a commitment to open access efforts. And I've been lucky to have been part of the overlap in the Venn diagram that lends itself to this project, but there's also been some advocacy that's been necessary to secure funding for contributions towards this project. So I want to talk about some of the things that have been helpful for me as a subject librarian in pushing for and securing the funding with my administration. So having the LARRP endorsement at the beginning of the project was really important. As a collective that has advocated for and funded various OA projects, LARRP has been a group where successful experimentation within the Latin American Studies librarian community has happened. There is a long track of success for collaborative projects, so the endorsement of the group for this pilot was an important precedent. The funding streams that have supported the project at UCLA and Columbia came from OA funding streams that were not part of my collections budgets that I manage. The relatively low monetary bar for participation in this effort, in contrast to the many more costly OA initiatives in STEM, made this very attractive initiative for the institutions that I was working at. I know that colleagues have also tapped into their collection budgets, including funding for Title VI funds, which makes for a compelling grant narrative about contributing to the national network, which is part of the work of the National Resource Centers. Because of timing of when we started this project, some institutions also tapped into collection funds during the period of the pandemic, when we were not getting much print material from Latin America due to distribution channel challenges. And some funding has come from year-end funds, and because of lags in vendor establishment systems, this was often more successful for libraries that had Cambeiro, who issues invoices for the project as an active vendor. So as you can see, like there were all of these sort of kind of ad hoc ways to get funding for this. In addition to messaging about our commitment to OA, the market and publishing landscape for area studies material is still heavily reliant in print. So any dent that we could make in space savings is welcomed, kind of another message to grab onto. And it was cleaner to manage this with the CLACSO front list, where I could ask our print approval vendor to exclude new titles, knowing that they would be discoverable and accessible via our discovery systems, in the case, as is the case with other JSTOR OA books. Angela Carreño and Melissa have also developed a fact sheet, which has been helpful kind of as a succinct document, which can be quickly digested by our administrators. And there's also a press release from JSTOR that is useful for summarizing the project. Feel free to contact Melissa or me for that documentation, or Robert. I'm sure people can contact you for usage statistics if people would like to advocate for the project at their institutions. So really glad to be here to get feedback and questions about the project and the things that we learned for project iteration. Thank you, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say about the project. Catch us here at the panel or elsewhere in the rest of the conference.